Hey guys, tonight we slip into the shoes of Nancy Wake, codename the White Mouse, a fearless spy who danced through enemy lines in World War II. This is where courage wore a trench coat and every forged document was a lifeline. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments who's tuning in and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see where in the world people are tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into Nancy's footsteps. Picture this. You're skulking beneath olive boughs in rural Provence, summer 1942, moonlight and the distant thrum of German half-tracks your unwelcome lullaby. The air smells of damp earth and spent gunpowder like history exhaling its regrets. You're here because London ordered you. Nancy Wake, now Madame Andre by day, the White Mouse by rumour, the Gestapo's favourite phantom. Why you? Because you know that a well-timed silence can kill faster than any gun. You press your back against a barn's splintered corner. Its wood creaks under your weight, as if begging for mercy. In your hand, a clunky radio transmitter hums with secrets, its paint peeled like sunburnt skin, wires coiled like reluctant snakes. You've updated your forged papers for June 10th, 1942. The date feels as tentative as a whispered alibi. Around you, odd sounds pulse. A crow caw so sharp it could slice taut nerves. And in the distance, boots crunch over gravel with mechanical precision. Your mission? Reroute a munitions convoy at first light. Failure means bullets keep landing where they snuff your friends' breaths. You slip the transmitter into the mud, its voice muted but ready, then nudge a barn door open. Cobwebs brush your cheek like silent reminders of time's decay. Inside, resistance fighters huddle beneath a single sputtering lantern that smells faintly of burnt oil and broken promises. One offers you a flask, its contents burn like regret. You nod, pocket your ration and unroll a ragged map that smells of damp chalk and desperation. Crouched over that crate-turned table, you murmur coordinates that feel heavy as lead. Every line on that map is a lifeline or a noose. You fold it away, steel yourself against a cough that betrays your presence. Outside, thunder rumbles, as if counting down. You flip open the transmitter's lid. The dials click with quiet menace. Your voice slips into the dark. Bravo Charlie, 0500 hours. Static sighs in reply, like an old ghost waking. You vanish then, melt into shadows before dawn can betray you. The barn exhales your echo, and the world holds its breath until rails tangle and your legend takes shape. Before you ever crouched in Provence, you were Nancy Grace Augusta Wake, born August 30th, 1912, in Wellington, New Zealand, mother-strong and determined, and father who you never met, probably went to go fetch milk or something. You grew up chasing storms on dusty sheep runs in Australia, after moving there at 6, learning to patch wounds as a nurse and patch lies as a chatterbox. At 21, you hopped freight ships to London, then parachuted into Paris's smoky jazz joints as a freelance journalist. You scribbled war reports by day and sipped absinthe by night, eavesdropping on diplomats like a secret agent in stilettos. When the Germans rolled into France in 40, you turned gossip into gold, smuggling Allied airmen out under cover of champagne-fueled soirees. The Gestapo dubbed you the White Mouse for your Houdini-style escapes, and London's special operations executive saw the headline, you become. They trained you in sabotage, coded transmissions, and the fine art of lethal persuasion, skill sets you never asked for, but wore like a second skin. Your marriage to Henry Fiocca grounded you, until he vanished somewhere between resistance cell and Gestapo torture chamber, another ghost in your history. By the time you parachuted back into France as Madame Andre, you'd traded every ounce of fear for razor-sharp resolve. And that backstory? It's why you're crouched under moonlight now, ready to flip enemy rails and rewrite history, because you always have been one step ahead, even before you knew the word spy. You land in Provence just past midnight, parachute straps still clinging to your coat, boots sinking into dewy grass like misplaced regrets. Moonlight laces through olive trees, each leaf a silent witness to your return. The same flashback you shook off only minutes ago now feels like someone else's story. You rub the mud from your radio pack and remember why you do this. London needs that convoy off track by dawn, and Marseille Station is your stage. The station isn't much, a squat brick box, a whistle blast from the docks, but tonight it's alive with iron lungs and murmured fears. Steam curls in lazy spirals, smelling of burnt coal and yesterday's industrial disappointment. You tug your coat tighter, hiding the cream envelope that holds your orders. Reroute at 0500 hours. Strike at milepost 32. Your gloves are too fine for this grit, but you're playing Madame André, a woman of means who never hunts in barnyards. Inside, ticket inspectors swarm over travellers like bees distracted by sugar. You drift through the crowd, noting the absurd sparkle on one officer's cufflink, shaped like a tiny tank, as if war could be polished and polite. You grip the radio's handset, its plastic sour with latent static. Beneath a velvet seat, you slide the receiver into place. It nestles there like a reluctant stowaway. A vendor hawks stale rolls. One smells of sour yeast and bad decisions. You buy it, crumbling crumbs into your pocket as plausible evidence of a civilian's hunger. Across the carriage, officers slump into seats, breathing steam onto frosted windows. You meet each gaze with practiced indifference, your silence louder than any challenge. At the precise minute, you click the transmitter, a soft spurt of code that sounds like a distant sigh. Bravo Charlie, 0500. Static murmurs back, confirming the game has begun. The train shudders awake and pulls out. Each wheel's thud a heartbeat toward chaos. You rise as it slows at the next stop and step onto the platform, turning your collar up against suspicion. In that moment, you're neither Nancy Wake nor Madame André, but a ghost wearing borrowed skin. Slipping into alleys before dawn can name you hero, traitor, or myth. Dawn's first light splits the sky as you slip through Marseille's back alleys, pavement slick with overnight fog and the stench of roasting chestnuts. You move like a wraith in a tailored trench coat, each footstep silent enough to irritate any nearby cat. Your destination is a chateau-turned-garrison, where German officers toast victory with spiced wine that tastes like cherry-flavoured ashes. You blend in by carrying a basket of fresh bread, which you'll never eat, as edible camouflage. You pause at an iron gate etched with peeling paint and bullet scars. Its lock clicks at your touch, a sound so gentle it feels conspiratorial. Inside, stone corridors stretch like the ribs of some ancient beast. You follow the echo of boots, your quarry's soundtrack, and duck into an alcove scented faintly of potpourri and paranoia. A lone guard paces beneath a chandelier that once sparkled, now droops like a wounded pride. His uniform smells of mothballs and misplaced confidence. You wait, breathing in the scent of his complacency, then step out with a perfunctory cough, your only weapon of distraction. In the commissary, crates of rifles lean against walls like bored teenagers. You unclip a small detonator from your belt, no bigger than a lipstick, and imagine its blast peeling paint off these horror show walls. You plant it inside a crate, labelled flour, because irony is a spice of its own. As you tuck the trigger behind sacks of sugar, you note the absurdity. Tomorrow, bakers might stir gunpowder into pastries, and no one will suspect a thing. A distant chime signals noon. You pocket your tools and head for the exit, pausing to steal a glance at a posted photograph of Hitler with a bowed bow tie, so stiff it could star in its own war documentary. You slip back into the street as though you were born in its shadows. By midnight, those rifles will bloom into fire. By morning, the convoy's manifest will read, misplaced, and your name won't appear anywhere. Pre-dawn, you descend into a vineyard cellar repurposed as a safe house, walls crusted with age and wine stains that smell like forgotten toasts. Low beams illuminate wooden barrels that gleam with stolen reserves. Resistance leaders hover around a battered table, faces etched like cracked leather. Their eyes flick to you, relief mingling with exhaustion. You press a trembling flask into their hands, cheap cognac that burns memories into mouths. One man tips his hat. It creaks like a greased hinge. You display the forged convoy orders with a flourish. Cargo redirected. Supply lines severed. There's a hush so deep it swallows your heartbeat. Then a woman breaks into a grin so wide it exposes every risk you've taken. Maps litter the table. Railways scrawled in charcoal. Bridges circled in red. You trace the route with a gloved finger, noting milepost 32 once more. A teenage courier shivers in the corner. You kneel and smooth his hair, grateful that someone younger than you still believes childhood exists. He smiles, bloodshot but bright, proof that hope persists in basement gloom. Outside, you hear the distant crack of rifle fire, your detonator at work perhaps, or a patrol startled by a phantom blast. You shrug into your coat. Urgency is a perfume you wear daily as you climb the stone stairs. The cellar exhales its secrets behind you, and you step back into dawn's grey hush. By sunrise, the world will know another whisper of the white mouse. By sunset, even fewer will remember your traces. And you'll be on to the next shadow ballet, always one pirouette ahead of the reaper. Hours later, night drapes over Provence again, thicker than a widow's veil. The wind stirs, carrying the distant whine of a bored pigeon and a faint tang of yesterday's cheese. You stride toward an abandoned viaduct, its arches yawning into the darkness like cathedral vaults waiting for a sermon of explosives. Your footsteps echo on cobblestones slick with moonlit dew. You carry a satchel heavy with timed charges, little parcels of fury set to bloom under steel rails. The wind stirs, carrying the distant clank of a guard's lantern, and you press yourself against a stone pillar, its cool surface grounding your racing pulse. Rails stretch ahead, a ribbon of iron promising destruction. You kneel, tracing a finger along the metal until you find the perfect spot, beneath the joint, where one well-placed blast unravels a convoy's path like a bad sweater. You unpack your charges. Each clicks into place with a satisfying fit. The detonator's wires snake back to your pack, where a single switch holds doom for the Axis supplies. You pause, considering the absurdity. This is how you've chosen to negotiate peace. Above, stars glint, as though nervous about what's about to unfold. You strip a glove to twist the final wire, metal biting into your skin, then stand, dusting off stone fragments. You step back and raise your thumb, signalling to your hidden spot. The flash is a heart in collision, bright, sudden, and gone like a gasp. Metal screams and splinters. Fire blooms along the track, painting the night in strokes of orange. You vanish into the olive grove as distant alarms begin their frantic aria. The viaduct trembles one last time before silence swallows it whole. You taste victory and soot on your tongue, setting off toward a rendezvous where dawn's light finds you alive and unscathed. Morning unfurls in lavender hues as you slip into a ruined farmhouse, safe house number 12, where the walls are pocked with bullet holes and memories that smell like overripe cheese at a regretful picnic. Inside, the resistance gathers, tension thick enough to choke on. You recount the viaduct's collapse with clipped precision, rails bent like broken promises, supply cars swallowed by flames. But cheers die on lips when a storm of accusations rises. One man's gaze flickers to another in doubt. The map you trusted has a mark you don't recall making. A whispered confession breaks free. Someone on the inside sold you out. You feel amusement bubble, betrayal in your midst of all things, but you swallow it as you would a bitter pill. You stride to the hearth, where a flask of smug cognac waits, its warmth oddly comforting, like a pig in pearls sipping bourbon. You pour black liquid into tin cups, passing them around as though one more drink will wash away suspicion. Faces soften into grim gratitude as the liquid burns through doubts. Then you voice the harsh truth. Traitors hide in plain sight, wearing loyalty like a moth-eaten coat. Under the fractured light, you outline a test. A courier must deliver a new set of orders by midday, unaccompanied. The guilty one will flinch at a simple code phrase. Silence settles like dust. You deliver the challenge with a calm that unsettles them more than any gun. In that ruin, you become judge, jury, and executioner, if only in their minds. They leave in pairs, nerves taut as crossed wires. You watch their silhouettes vanish into morning mist, knowing one will return with truth in their eyes. And as you sip the last of your cognac, you brace for the reckoning. Knowing the shadows of betrayal are darker than any that chased you here. By midday, you slip away from the bullet-pocked farmhouse and find refuge in a nondescript safe house on the outskirts where ivy claims its innocence. Night drapes itself over the crumbling courtyard, thick enough to wear, its puddles glinting like half-hearted lanterns. A lone owl hoots, its note flat and out of tune, like a drunk musician testing the high C before a funeral march. You check your watch. The courier should be here any second, and your patience is stretched thinner than your last clean shirt. A scraping boot interrupts your thoughts. The courier emerges from the mist, cloak dripping like remorse, carrying the test you devised at dawn. His collar is buttoned all the way up, as though suffocation is a posture of loyalty. You greet him with a nod that feels more like a judge's gavel. He hands over the reinforced envelope. His knuckles are white enough to pass for moonlight. You clear your throat, voice smooth as oiled leather. When ravens gather at midnight. He blanches, eyes flicking to the cracked plaster overhead, as if expecting crows to swoop down. Silence fills the gap where trust once stood. You pace, heels clicking like a secretive metronome. The men around you lean in, shadows shifting with their doubts. You smile, thin, almost a smirk, and lift the envelope's corner with a flourish. Irony is a spice you savour. Inside, the false orders are stamped urgent, yet scream trap like a warning siren. The courier's shoulders slump to match his confession, coerced, blackmailed, broken. You tie him to a nearby pillar with coarse rope. No malice, only necessity. His head droops, surrendering to the floor's dirt like a penitent child. You address the cell. Trust must be tested like steel in fire, or it bends under pressure. Your words land sharp, shaping resolve from chaos. Outside, the owl's dissonant hoot sounds like applause, mocking, eccentric, perfect. Before dawn, just before the sky bleeds light into day, you lead your hardened cell through narrow lanes toward a derelict plaza, your stage for a disappearing act. The morning air is thick with damp and possibility, as if the world holds its breath. You place the handcuffed courier conspicuously at the plaza's center, his boots echoing hollowly against cracked flagstones. Nearby, you hide your team behind shattered fountains, faces half-lit, rifles at the ready. You signal the Gestapo detachment in the distance, an innocuous wave that feels like a coup de théâtre. They approach, swaggering under the illusion of control, until they stop short at the chained figure. You watch as their boots skid on pebbles, fear masquerading as discipline. When one officer crouches to inspect the lock, he notices the courier's cufflink, mismatched, one half gold, the other steel, a detail too odd for coincidence. At your cue, a silent flare arcs above the broken bell tower, a signal brighter than any truth. Flashlights gleam across rubble like startled fireflies. Rifles crack open the dawn with polite single shots, and the courtyard transforms into a stage of chaos. When silence reasserts itself, the Gestapo lie disarmed or dazed. Helmets toppled like toppled kings, their pride scattered like confetti. Even the air tastes of stale cheese and last night's regrets, a reminder that victory is never purely sweet. The prisoner is gone, vanished in the disarray like a guilty hangover, neither rescued nor abandoned, simply impossible to track. You gather your cell and melt into the waking streets, leaving behind only footprints in rumour and the faint scent of spent gunpowder. You blink awake in the cramped attic of a safe house, dawn light seeping through a single cracked window, painting dust motes like floating confessions. Below, Marseille's rail yard hums with routine lethargy. Trains hiss, crates shift, and guards shuffle past like roaches in search of crumbs. You've come for the aftermath. Locomotives diverted, schedules in ruin, and the sweet perfume of chaos. You tuck a fresh mission dossier under your arm. Sabotage orders for every remaining supply line through the Alps. Slipping down rickety stairs, you inhale the attic's stale perfume, mildew mixed with last night's cigarette butts. You exit through a scuffed side door onto a narrow alley, where a stray cat glares at you like it knows your secrets. At the yard entrance, you flash a forged permit stamped with the SOE's seal, smudged enough to be believable. A bored guard waves you through, none the wiser that you carry nothing more lethal than a penknife and a vial of acid disguised as cough syrup. You dart between carriages, every footstep a silent auction with danger. You pause at a coal bunker, unsling a length of detonation cable, and wrap acid-soaked filaments around wheel bearings, an inconvenience about to blossom into mayhem. Each twist of cable is precise, a choreographer's flourish in this grim ballet. A distant whistle blares. You freeze, then melt back into shadow. One wrong note, and your history. Finishing your work, you tuck the cable's end into your coat pocket and hatch your escape, adrift across tracks timed to the next train's departure. As that engine roars to life, you weave between wheels, adrenaline warming your bones. On the other side, you pause to watch coal dust erupt behind you, an anthracite applause. You vanish into a sewer grate before the crows of alarm even learn to caw. Night falls like a velvet blanket as you converge on a riverside estate, host of the Wehrmacht's latest gala. Lanterns dangle from gnarled trees, casting dinners into chiaroscuro. Laughter ripples like broken glass. Officers dine on roast goose and fluted wine, gastronomic spoils that reek of privilege. You slip through a hedge maze carrying a small wooden box, its contents a feast of your own making. Inside, concealed beneath a false bottom, lie trays of poisoned pâté, culinary assassination wrapped in pâté de foie elegance. You navigate past flunkies and flamenco dancers, each step choreographed to avoid suspicion. You pause to observe a commander swirling his burgundy as though auditioning for a Renaissance portrait, hair so meticulously styled it could defy wind. In the grand hall, whispered introductions echo off stone columns. You offer the box to a passing steward, voice low, from a grateful local. The steward's eyes flicker with greed as he lifts the lid and inhales that rich pâté aroma. The scent of death, wearing a tuxedo. Plates pass around, glasses clink in toasts to victory. You count seconds, 6, 9, 12. By the 13th bite, the most esteemed guests will be sleeping forever. You withdraw to a balcony overlooking the river, watching lanterns dot the lawn like fallen fireflies. You savour the faint pop of diaphragms meeting toxin, a symphony of betrayal. Thin smoke drifts upward from chimneys, mingling with the night as officers seize their throats. Your reflection blurs in the moonlit water. Nancy Wake, socialite butcher, feast of foxes. Behind you, the estate erupts into chaos, cries and scuttling feet, as your work ripples through high society. And you step back into the hedges, silhouette swallowed by night, already tasting the victory's bittersweet aftertaste. Before dawn bleeds fully into the sky, you're racing along winding mountain roads in a stolen ambulance. Sirens painted for show, not rescue. The driver, a jittery ex-policeman turned resistance driver, glances at you with wide eyes. You pat the dashboard soothingly, as if cajoling a skittish horse. In the back, crates of explosives clatter like oversized maracas, ready to turn alpine supply routes into a shaken samba. Before dawn bleeds fully into the sky, you're racing along winding mountain roads in a stolen ambulance. Sirens painted for show, not rescue. The driver, a jittery ex-policeman turned resistance driver, glances at you with wide eyes. You pat the dashboard soothingly, as if cajoling a skittish horse. In the back, crates of explosives clatter like oversized maracas, ready to turn alpine supply routes into a shaken samba. You screech to a halt beneath a narrow viaduct bridge, where rail tracks snake through a gorge. The air tastes of pine and imminent disaster. You fling open the doors, rain of spent cartridges pattering on the roof. With your team, you unload the barrels, each labelled only by a tiny red fuse looped like a question mark. You place them with surgical precision under rails where avalanches might swallow an entire convoy. Above you, mountain eagles wheel in silent tribute. One lets out a harsh cry, as though offended by your meddling. You kneel, twisting fuses until they lie flush with sleepers. A misstep would be lethal. You savour that edge, close enough to feel danger's breath on your neck. You light the priming cord, its glow like a reluctant firefly trapped in a thunderstorm. You're back behind the wheel moments later. The ambulance lurches forward, tyres spitting gravel. You glance in the rear view, sparks snaking beneath the tracks. A carnival of fuses awakening into roar. Behind you, the mountain answers with a thunder more ancient than war. You arrive in a sleepy village pinned to the hillside, houses tacked onto cliffs like mismatched patchwork. At its centre, a florist's stall bursts with blooms in defiance of wood smoke and ration lines. You weave through huts carrying false identity papers stamped with a local matron's name, Madame Blanche Rousseau, florist and gossip extraordinaire. Inside the stall, the scent of wilted petals mingles with the sharp tang of disinfectant. The proprietor, a stout woman with eyes as shrewd as pruning shears, greets you like a queen surveying a kingdom of weeds. You exchange pleasantries, compliments on hydrangeas that have survived too many winters, and slip a hidden message into a bouquet of lavender so subtle it might pass as aromatherapy. She tuts about inflated prices and missing chickens, and you jingle coins to prove you're no charity case. Beneath the florid chatter, you discern rumours of a Gestapo roundup planned at dusk. You tilt your head, feign shock, then pivot the conversation to hay deliveries, every word a petal masking a thorn. By dusk, your masquerade has bloomed, vital intel tucked among dahlias, ready for London's ears. You tuck the bouquet under your arm and step into the twilight, a painted veil of innocence hiding deadly intent. And as village lamps flicker on, you vanish into the floral shadows, ready to sow the next bloom of rebellion. As dusk falls over the ruined monastery, smoke curls above arches where monks once whispered prayers. Now the walls echo with the hiss of sabotage. You pick your way through collapsed corridors, each stone groaning under secrets long buried. At the heart, a stack of oil drums stands guard over a bridge's support beams. Smoke curls above a ruined monastery where monks once whispered prayers. Now the walls echo with the hiss of sabotage. You pick your way through collapsed arches, each stone groaning under secrets long buried. At the heart, a stack of oil drums stands guard over a bridge's support beams. You approach, clipboard in hand, a guise as mundane as municipal inspection. The drums smell of diesel and old regrets, and you note their placement with the clinical detachment of a tired auditor. You scribble a fake approval, then set to work, tapping each drum to locate the hollow note, a symphony of potential destruction. Your toolkit is modest, cattle prods repurposed as detonators, wires looped like question marks. You affix charges to the bridge's pillars, each click a precise punctuation in your covert opus. Nearby, vines creep over stone coffins, as if trying to root out the dead. You pause, humming a lullaby you can't remember. Perhaps it belonged to someone who counted on this crossing. A single crow lands on a broken ledge, fellow conductor to your performance. You nod to it, a silent acknowledgement. Then you light the fuse's end, a tiny spark that will bloom into an overture of collapse. You retreat, clipboard abandoned, feet gliding over rubble. From a distance, the drums flare, the bridge quakes, and chunks of stone rain like confetti at a funeral. You slip away through moonlit cloisters, soot on your gloves, and satisfaction in your chest, your symphony complete, another chorus of ashes for history's ledger. You find yourself in a subterranean quarry, repurposed as a resistance depot, caverns cut into the earth like the veins of an ancient beast. Lamplight flickers off damp walls, revealing crates of weapons stacked like oversized marbles. Each crate's label is coated in dust, the letters barely legible. Pistols, maps, mayhem. You descend wooden stairs that creak in protest, inhaling the quarry's damp perfume, mineral tang mixed with the sharp bite of oil. Rebel fighters nod in greeting, eyes bright with mistrust and hope. You move among them, offering concise updates. Rails destroyed, Gestapo misled, new intel in hand. Each message lands like a pebble in a still pond, ripples of strategy stretching outward. At the cavern's heart, you find a table strewn with maps and marbles, an old training game repurposed. Each marble marks a sabotage point. The quarry's echo swallows your steps as you place a new marble on a map. The rail tunnel beneath Mont Blanc, next in line for your attention. A fighter jokes about the absurdity of carving tunnels just to blow them up. You smile, subtly, not sweetly, and reply that war's marbles are fatal when gravity's on your side. Suddenly, the lamps flicker, a distant rumble shakes the cavern. You freeze, recalling the bridge's collapse and the abbey's stones dancing in dust. The fighters grip rifles, you draw your blade, simple steel, biting into shadow. The rumble grows, not from enemy fire, but from tunnel blasts elsewhere. A grin ghosts over your lips. Someone's staging their own marbles in the dark. You tuck the new marble into your pocket, a token of strategy to come, and lead your fighters toward the cavern mouth. Outside, the night air is crisp, charged with echoes of distant explosions. And you're already recalibrating, ready to roll new marbles in this lethal game. Hours later, you slip into a deserted fairground at the edge of town, a phantom carnival hungering for laughter that vanished long ago. Rusting Ferris wheels loom like skeletal sentinels against the moonlit sky. Ticket booths stand empty, their windows splintered like broken promises. You carry a satchel of propaganda leaflets, messages disguised as carnival flyers promising free cotton candy and a brighter tomorrow. You plant stacks of leaflets beneath the carousel's ornate horses, their chipped paint frozen in eternal gallop. Each leaflet proclaims, "The Reich trembles where hearts unite." You imagine terrified officers reading propaganda under flickering lamplight, their uniforms itching with doubt. You pinch a torn poster fluttering from a lamppost. Its slogan reads, "Join the fun or else." A crooked grin tugs at your lips. Nothing says resistance like forced amusement. A distant howl, maybe wind, maybe a stray dog, echoes through vendor stalls. You drape leaflets over prize shelves, pin them to prize wheels, and slip a single sheet into a dangling cotton candy bag. Playful sabotage. You think tastes sweeter than any sugar. As dawn teases the horizon, you step back to survey your work, leaflets swirling in the breeze, carnival ghosts clutching their own lies. You vanish before the sun rises on a broken circus, leaving only fluttering doubts and the distant creak of rusted joy. Night finds you in a grand ballroom commandeered by the Gestapo, a hall of mirrored walls and gilded chandeliers that drip with ostentation. Officers and informers waltz beneath crystal prisms, their steps a ritual of self-congratulation. You glide in among them, draped in a borrowed gown, whose sequins catch the light like shards of shattered trust. You approach a marble fountain at the room's heart, where water trickles with a hollow resonance. Beneath the basin, you've placed vials of sleeping toxin. Just a drop in the fountain will turn triumphant laughter into hushed gasps. You raise your glass in a casual salute, toasting with a hulking SS officer whose uniform strains at the seams. He chuckles at a joke you didn't tell. You smile, letting his arrogance drown in champagne. With sorcerous subtlety, you uncork a vial and tip its contents into the fountain's spout, water swirling with an innocent sheen. Guests lean in to admire their reflections. You relish the thought of faces slackening mid-waltz. A violinist strikes a discordant note, his bow quivering like a hunted thing. You slip away, gown whispering across marble floors. Moments later, the first officer pauses mid-step, gaze glassing over. Laughter dies on lips. The waltz falters. Mirrors shiver with half-formed phantoms as officers clutch at throats, drifting toward unconsciousness. You watch from an arched doorway, fingertips tracing old graffiti. Freedom is never still. The chandelier above rattles, as if applauding your dalliance with devilry. You vanish into the night's embrace, another shadow in their cursed ballroom. At the stroke of midnight, you surface in Grenoble's clandestine bazaar, where black market traders hawk everything from rubber tires to stolen kisses. Lanterns dangle overhead, each one casting more suspicion than the last. Stalls line narrow alleys, piled high with ration cards, silk scarves, and bartered secrets. You surface in Grenoble's clandestine bazaar, where black market traders hawk everything from rubber tires to stolen kisses. Lanterns dangle overhead, each one casting more suspicion than the last. Stalls line narrow alleys, piled high with ration cards, silk scarves, and bartered secrets. You patrol the maze, adopting the posture of a curious customer, fingertips ghosting over contraband like a detective reading Braille. You rendezvous with a jaded arms dealer, his stand draped in pistols that glint under flickering lights. You bend to inspect one, murmuring feigned admiration for its craftsmanship. He nods, shifting his weight like a caged animal. You whisper the code to access hidden caches. Silver moon upon the Alps. He slides open a false panel, revealing crates of ammunition stamped with swastikas. You scrawl a note in invisible ink. Burn this map at dawn, and tuck it beneath rows of bullets. A band of Gestapo informers drifts by, their noses twitching like hounds at a scent. You weave through the crowd, pocketing ration cards stamped invalid and trading them for fresh intel on troop movements. The air buzzes with deals, struck in stifled tones and laughter as brittle as old bones. You smirk at a child juggling confiscated medals, a circus of war in miniature. As the clock strikes midnight, you slip through a market exit sealed by a pushcart of withered vegetables. The bazaar's hum fades behind you like a receding heartbeat. In your satchel, you carry enough contraband to spark another rebellion, and a half-eaten pastry that tastes like freedom. By pre-dawn light, you infiltrate a garden party under the patronage of a Vichy collaborator. Gardeners prune rose bushes behind high hedges, their shears snipping like whispered secrets. You pose as a horticultural consultant. Chalk dust on your fingers and a clipboard bearing botanical scrawl. The party's elite sip tea in silken lapels, gossiping over specimens fed by forced labour. You kneel beside a rose bush and release pods of a slow-acting irritant. One sniff will send skin erupting in itchy welts, distracting guards long enough for your team to slip inside. A lady ahead gasps at a sudden itch, her parasol drooping like wilting petals. You jot notes on your clipboard. Bush requires more sun. Consider relocation. Downwind, officers begin to scratch as if possessed by tiny demons. The party fractures into chaos, tea and decorum spilling onto manicured lawns. You rise, brushing imaginary dirt from your coat, and pivot toward the garden's back gate. Behind you, laughter mingles with curses, the scent of roses now tinged with mischief. Your journey comes full circle at dawn's first light in an occupied theatre repurposed for propaganda screenings. Rows of seats stare empty, screens flicker with lies, and you step onto the stage, a lone performer amid broken scenery. The orchestra pit lies silent save for your own heartbeat echoing in the rafters. You place a single suitcase centre stage, its contents a wireless transmitter broadcasting intercepted directives, the Führer's own words laid bare for the citizens to hear. You punch the frequency with trembling fingers. The screen behind you floods with static, then the guttural voice of the Reich itself. In the hushed theatre, you watch images of defeated armies, crumbling fortresses, and shadows of liberation. Behind you, footsteps echo, a Gestapo unit trailing you into the wings. You smile, voice low. Encore. With a flourish, you pull a lever. The stage ignites in a barrage of pyrotechnics. Smoke, sparks, a symphony of chaos. The guards reel as the set collapses in a shower of debris. You dive backstage, disappearing through trapdoors as orders crackle through the transmitter. Liberty rises where lies fall. Outside, the theatre's façade glows, its windows ablaze like wide eyes witnessing a final act. You slip into the awakening city, your silhouette elongated by lamplight. The curtain falls on tyranny tonight, and the white mouse. She's already vanished into the wings, leaving only echoes of defiance and the promise of acts yet unwritten. Well, there you have it. Nancy Wake's final curtain call. If you dug this nocturnal journey through shadows and sabotage, do me a favour. Like the video and subscribe for more sleepless history. Drop a comment below letting me know which twist surprised you most or where you're tuning in from. And hey, if you've got a dark corner of history you want illuminated next, let me know. Now, if her daring deeds in the shadows left you stirring with curiosity, prepare yourself for an even grander stage. The global drama of World War II, from whispered codes in frozen forests to roaring tanks carving through sunlit dunes. We're about to drift across continents and years in a gentle, absurd, and surprisingly human lullaby of conflict and courage. Imagine a gentle breeze whispering through the pages of history, carrying us back to a world on the brink of change, the late summer of 1939. Picture yourself stood in a sleepy Polish village, fields ripe with golden wheat swaying in a lazy dance under a soft sun. The air holds the warmed scent of hay and freshly baked bread from the small bakery at the village square. Farmers pause in their work, wiping sweat from sunburned brows, exchanging curious glances as distant rumblings echo across the gentle hills. Tanks, sleek, cold giants of steel, rumble into view, their tracks carving furrows through the dusty road. The whispered crackle of radio transmissions drifts from unseen sources, laden with words like blitzkrieg and mobilization. In that moment, the world inhales sharply, and we exhale into a story that will span continents and years. As the first leaves of autumn begin to fall, we drift northwest to London, where the city's heartbeat thrums beneath layers of history and stone. Imagine cobblestone streets bathed in the glow of lamplight, the soft patter of rain against slate rooftops creating a soothing percussion. Yet beneath the rhythm lies tension, air raid sirens testing their cry, a low wail that shivers down spines before it fades. Underground stations transform into sanctuaries. Families gather on wooden benches, bringing homemade stew and soft blankets. The flicker of candles casts dancing shadows on chalked slogans. Keep calm and carry on, as children press their foreheads to cold walls, eyes heavy with worry and wonder. Above ground, volunteers in yellow jackets place sandbags at window ledges, their movements slow and deliberate, as though in a silent ballet performed to stave off fear. By midwinter, the chill spreads across Europe like a whispered warning. In the French countryside, snow blankets fields that once brimmed with lilies. In the hush of dawn, resistance couriers, slender women cloaked in shawls, trace hidden forest paths, their breath curling in the frigid air. Frost-laden trees arch overhead, their branches bowing like reverent worshippers. The crunch of snow beneath soft-soled boots is the only sound, until a wounded airman appears, blue lips parted in a silent plea. He clutches a folded RAF escape map, its ink smudged by frost, and the courier offers him a flask of hot barley water, the steam curling upward like a silent promise of safety. As winter loosens its grip, the winds of change surge across the Mediterranean. In North Africa, imagine endless dunes, their lines sculpted by wind into sinewy curves. British Matildas and German Panzer IIIs face off beneath a cloudless sky, engines humming like giant insects stirring in the sun. Heat shimmers off the sand, creating mirages of distant oases. At twilight, soldiers gather around crackling campfires strewn with discarded ration tins. Beans and bully beef, pouring mint tea from battered kettles. The aroma of sizzling camel steaks mingles with laughter as men trade stories of home, a daughter's first dance recital, a father's favourite apple pie recipe, a lullaby of connection, reminding them that even in war's furnace, hearts beat with hope. Drifting eastward, we find ourselves on the Eastern Front in the bleak winter of 1942. Imagine endless forests of frost-laden pines, their branches bowed under crystal snow, like silent sentinels watching the icy struggle below. The siege of Leningrad drags on, each day another frozen note in a heartbreaking dirge. The distant peal of church bells muffled by wind, the scrape of wooden sleds crossing iced-over courtyard squares. Citizens share scraps of black bread, just grams of flour mixed with sawdust, warming them over coals in bricks of makeshift ovens. Children's laughter is rare, yet when a stray cat appears, prowling for scraps, momentary giggles ripple through the streets. Further south, at Stalingrad, the Volga flows beneath a sheet of ice, spiked with barges frozen in place. The air smells of smoke and steel as snipers perch among crumpled factories, their breaths pluming in the cold as they squeeze triggers. Soldiers dig trenches in permafrost, their shovels clinking against buried remnants of civilian life, broken dolls, chipped porcelain. Inside gutted apartment blocks, medics tend to frostbite victims by candlelight, their fingers red and pulpy as they wrap soaked gauze. Yet amid the ruin, small acts of kindness endure. A Red Army lieutenant sharing a scrap of chocolate hidden in his pocket. A German POW slipping a captured warm cap to a shaking Russian soldier before disappearing into snow. Meanwhile, Operation Torch launches in November, carrying us back to the warmer sands of North Africa. Imagine British and American boots crunching through olive groves at dawn, the rustle of leaves whispering hopes of liberation. Jeeps kick up dust as rangers race toward Tunis under flares that glow like ghostly lanterns, while Free French fighters cheer them on with shouted encouragement and clinking coffee cups. The mingled accents, drawls, Queen's English, clipped Parisian French, blend with the call of desert larks, creating a mosaic of unity beneath a blazing sun. As winter 1942 loosens its grip, the turning tide emerges at El Alamein. Picture moonlit dunes where Commonwealth troops, Kiwis, Canadians, Australians huddle around warming fires, plotting their nocturnal advance. Tanks roll through valleys scented with creosote and petrol, their engines thundering a lullaby of inevitability for Axis forces. When dawn breaks, the horizon glows pink and gold, revealing German and Italian lines receding like shadows at sunrise. By spring 1943, the battle's crescendo reaches Kursk, the largest tank clash in history. Fields once fertile bleed oil as thousands of T-34s and Panthers collide under dark clouds. Imagine the metallic roar merging with thunder, drums heralding a pivotal turn. Pilots in IL-2 Sturmovix loop above, their propellers chopping air into a staccato beat. On the ground, tank crews exchange wry smiles through periscopes, comradeship born in fire and mud. Back in London, Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt meet at Casablanca in January, sipping scotch in velvet-draped rooms as cigars smoke like solemn prayers. The Declaration of Allied Unity is typed on heavy parchment, each keystroke a promise that echoes in quiet corridors. Across the Atlantic, North American shores roar with factory life, Detroit's assembly lines building half-tracks and Sherman tanks in symphonic precision. Women, Rosie's all, balance rivet guns with grace, their laughter dancing above the clang of steel. Radio programs host variety shows, suddenly interrupted by solemn updates. Allied forces have broken the siege of Leningrad, or Operation Husky lands troops on Sicilian shores. Families hold radios to their hearts, clinging to every flickering word. In the Pacific, 1943 sees Guadalcanal's humid jungles echo with the crash of artillery and the chatter of code talkers translating Cherokee whispers. Marines receive mail so thin it feels like hope itself. Each letter read aloud around campfires scented with coconut oil and gunpowder. Thus, winter's ice and summer's heat in 1942 and 1943 become twin verses in a grand lullaby, each scene rich with the taste of barley water by forest fires, the warmth of solidarity in desert bivouacs, the metallic perfume of tank oil on spring air. These are the quiet echoes of human resilience, inviting you to close your eyes and drift deeper into history's gentle embrace. In Pittsburgh, steel mills belch sparks into the twilight sky, while foremen high-five welders whose sparks dance like fireflies. In small-town Iowa, farmers strap on overalls emblazoned with "Farmers for Freedom," loading wheat shipments bound for distant shores. Train whistles echo through valleys, carrying not just iron and grains, but letters, long, looping cursive from mothers and sweethearts urging their boys to stay safe, reminding them of apple pies cooling on windowsills. Then comes the summer of '44 in southern England. Picture meandering lanes lined with sun-bleached hedgerows and sleepy villages like St Ives and Limpstone that suddenly find themselves hosting more buttoned-up strangers than a debutante ball. Pilots, whose idea of fresh air was usually the inside of a cockpit, now sniff the countryside and joke that they've never smelled so much grass. They tighten bootlaces by candlelight. Because yes, blackout regulations still apply, and debate the relative merits of chicken or egg for breakfast as though it were a high-stakes strategy meeting. Hand-drawn good luck signs festoon hedgerows, big enough to launch a Spitfire through if someone got carried away with enthusiasm. On the night of June 5th to 6th, the moon doesn't just rise, it practically cartwheels overhead, silver and conspicuous, daring the channel waters not to glisten. Landing craft slip through the waves like oversized bathtub toys, engines muffled into a whisper. Soldiers, stiff as newly starched sheets, step onto oiled planks and nearly stumble because they forgot that gravity still works on the other side of the channel. The water laps against the hull as though congratulating them on the bravado or mocking them for dawdling before they slog forward into history. Dawn catches them mid-cough, mid-sneeze, "Did you remember to pack socks?" as shells begin their unwelcome applause. Yet, in that chaos, when steel meets sand and chestnuts bounce off helmets, there's an odd poetry in unison, every gasp cough and heartbeat sinking into an anthem of "we said we'd do this, so let's do it." Back in England, the battered cottages stand resolute, their walls still trembling from the distant booms. Housewives emerge, hair curlers still in place, to rescue teacups and quietly cheer as chalked tally marks on door frames tick upward. Days without a major bombing, and days until victory. Meanwhile, on the continent, the liberation of Paris unfolds like a confetti cannon after a very dark party. Imagine boulevards lined with faded posters, each one ripped to bits by German boots, until freedom fighters, sous chef turned resistance hero style, start daubing new slogans with stolen pots of paint. Liberté and bring on the baguettes. As Allied tanks roll through the Arc de Triomphe, Parisians pop champagne corks like small fireworks. Sidewalk cafes erupt in applause, and waiters in aprons hang Allied medals on broom handles for passers-by to salute. But before the Mayflowers fully bloom, there's Operation Market Garden in September, an airborne party that included more paratroopers than a surprise meteor shower. British, Polish and American gliders drift down like clumsy moths, landing among Dutch tulip fields so distracted by the blooms that some soldiers thought they'd accidentally signed up for a gardening expedition. Bridges, those coveted concrete spans, become high-value playthings, fortified by Germans, who seem to think they've been invited to the same game. Yet despite soggy boots and misplaced jeeps, the Allies leapfrog their way to Arnhem, only to find that victory sometimes takes a detour. By late autumn, the Ardennes thicket sees its own twist, the Battle of the Bulge. It's so named because the front line bulges outward like a too-tight sweater, an impressive but unwanted fashion statement. American GIs wake to snow up to their knees, grumbling that they signed up for Europe, not the North Pole. Tanks groan as they burrow through drifts, and supply trucks skid sideways like they're auditioning for a skating rink. Yet, between exchanges of hot cocoa and rifle fire, soldiers carve ice sculptures of enemy emblems, just soft enough to laugh about and just sturdy enough to remind them of what they're fighting for: home. Then comes the hush of late winter, 1945, when generals in pinstripe suits convene at Yalta to scribble the future on napkins. Okay, official documents, while Churchill puffs cigars that curl like question marks. And Roosevelt naps in his wheelchair, dreaming of peace as kaleidoscopes swirl overhead. In the Pacific, 1945 is its own trilogy. First, Iwo Jima, an island smaller than Manhattan, but with the aerial traffic of 3 Kennedy airports. Marines scramble up ash-covered slopes like caffeinated mountain goats, each flag raising atop Mount Suribachi, a silent cheer for "We got this." Next comes Okinawa, where kamikaze pilots dive in with dramatic flair, and sailors learn to pour coffee with one hand while scanning the sky with the other. Ship decks ring with laughter and alarms, a dissonant duet that somehow underscores survival. And then August arrives with a twist no one saw coming. 2 atomic encores over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, a light show that makes every fireworks night seem like a teaspoon sparkler. When the echoes fade, it's not exactly a lullaby, but it is the unwelcome herald of an end. On August 15th, the Emperor's voice crackles over radio waves, an audio olive branch. In Tokyo, families gather under paper lanterns, their faces illuminated in hopeful hues. Neighbours exchange bowls of rice, relieved that sticky grains can still be sticky in a world that desperately needs cohesion. By September, when the last APO address goes silent, the planet exhales in unison. Soldiers come home to front porches strewn with welcome mats, kids in pyjamas too big for them yelling, "Welcome home, mister," and mothers blinking back tears, so potent they'd melt the hardest shell suit of armour. factories shift from churning Sherman tanks to baking potato chips, and city folks rediscover pleasures like the smell of unrationed butter. Victory over Japan is marked by ice cream cones, vanilla, chocolate, swirl, served in mess halls and paraded through main streets draped in banners. A 5-cent treat that tastes like the very concept of safe. In the first Christmas after the guns, families gather around radio sets playing Bing Crosby, crooning about silent nights. Maybe ironic, but it sticks. Kids leave cookies out for Santa and add an extra dollop for the pilot riding in on a sleigh disguised as a C-47. In London, St. Paul's Cathedral bells ring at midnight, welcoming peace like a long-lost friend. Then dawn cracks over 1946, and the world, ever the restless storyteller, begins to rebuild its tale. Victory gardens overrun sidewalks with zucchini, turning lawns into elated jungles where a single tomato can be hailed as a hero. Radio dramas add new chapters. Rocket ships to Mars and polio cures. Ideas that sound as absurd and wonderful as planting potatoes in your hat. As you snuggle under blankets tonight, imagine swapping war's roar for the soft purr of a Victory Garden's bees, the hiss of an ice cream scoop, and the distant echo of that first post-war BBC broadcast. Let the absurdity of history glide as mistaken for gardening tips, generals scribbling maps on napkins, kamikazes meeting coffee, lull you towards sleep. History's a friend with a wry grin, and tonight's anecdote is its gentlest. Even the fiercest storms end in laughter and lullabies.